you don't necessarily have to be specialist in everything. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but just knowing what you want, what is the creative mission, what tools you need in order to achieve it, then you can just reach out and very easily adapt.
Hello and welcome to the University of Salford Film Production MA. I'm Beth McCann, Programme Leader, and with me today I have the module leaders and some core teaching staff on the MA. Should we take a moment to kind of introduce yourselves, maybe your specialisms, and then we're going to have a bit of a chat with you about the MA, what it's all about and what we do on the MA. So should I go to my right? Hello.
Yes, hi. My name is Pavel Prokopic. I am a filmmaker. I specialize in experimental film and innovative practices in film, and I am a module leader for the Established and Innovative Practices, which is the Trimester 1 module.
Fabulous, thank you.
So yeah, I'm Billy Glue. I work on the major project module in the third trimester. So that's the module I work on here mainly, and do little bits of guest talking on some of the other ones. As well as that, my main area is sound, doing post-production sound and production sound recording, and then I also make my own films outside of the university, where I sometimes do directing or camera and obviously sound as well. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Alex Lichtenfels, and I'm the module leader for the collaboration and co-creation module that students on the MA will take in the second trimester. I'm a producer by trade. I was a producer for 10 years before I became a full-time academic. And I'm also a filmmaker, and my research at the moment is around devised filmmaking, which is something that you will also hopefully get the opportunity to do in the second trimester.
Fabulous, thank you everybody. And we also have a plethora of other lecturers on the modules who teach across the modules and are also mentors, of which I myself am also one of the mentors and teach across. My area of interest and specialism is around script writing and script development, so I kind of work across all three modules and with the students as well, because storytelling obviously is at the heart of what we all do. So I think a good place to start talking about our MA is something that we're really kind of proud about the way in which we look at filmmaking and how we approach it through this MA, which is quite particular, we think, and feel.
I think one of the key points about the course is that it's based around what we call practice research. So the idea is that people who come on the course will undertake different assignments, and they'll create different pieces of practical work. That could be a film, or it could be an installation, or whichever it is that you create. But the idea is that whichever work you are doing, there's always a research element. So for example, you might have an area that you want to investigate, and then you create a film which explores that area that you're investigating. So they should always be like completely linked, the two things, the research and the practice. There should be like a to and fro between them. So you might research something, then do some practice about it, then reflect on that practice you did, and then that informs your research, and it's like it's backwards and forwards between the two. So if you can link those completely, then that's when you really sort of like working well in that area. So that's a big part of the course, and it's what makes it a bit different to straightforward filmmaking course, that research element.
And I think for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, part of that practice as research is that practice as research is in itself a really valuable model of doing creative practice. If you are trying to respond to a question that you've got, or you are trying to investigate something within your own practice and really kind of try and articulate how to make a particular element of your own practice better, or to improve it, or to respond to a particular situation that's out there in the world, that this will actually make your practice better. So I think, and Billy alluded to this already, but I think what's really maybe important to emphasize is that when we're talking about practice as research, that's not a purely academic exercise. It's a model of making the practice itself better.
Definitely.
No, that's absolutely right. I think another thing that is worth pointing out about this MA is that we are really trying to challenge the sort of the solidified somewhat stale production sort of conditions in the film industry, and trying to really look into the future and consider sort of new ways of making, and really sort of questioning sort of assumptions that filmmakers make. And we are also kind of trying to be really nimble about the developments in the film industry, and trying to produce or sort of raise as a generation of filmmakers that are highly adaptable, and they are sort of more geared towards being the leaders of the industry rather than simply working in more kind of secondary roles. And likewise, we see the film industry as one that is that is impacted by automation. And what that really means is that there'll be more sort of more emphasis on leadership and on sort of on creativity and innovation, and sort of working in small teams and being very versatile with one's skills. And I would say that the key to that versatility is to be able to think on one's feet, and to always challenge one's practice, and to be reflective of one's practice. And that again, for that, practice as research is a wonderful tool.
Okay, so if we take this time to talk about the modules and kind of look at how the course is framed, because what's quite unique about this course as well is that we work through just 3 60-credit modules, which is quite unique. So if you've come from having done maybe a BA, you'll be used to having kind of lots of maybe smaller modules, a selection of 20-credit modules, whereas here we don't. We have 3 60-credit modules, so each are weighted exactly the same over the 12-month period of the course. So it's September to September.
Yes, so the module is called Established Innovative Practices. It is very much about, first of all, bringing everybody up to speed with some of the essential skills, or also to deepen some of the skills. We do focus on some of the key roles in film, such as directing, script writing, and cinematography. And we want students to deepen their skills and abilities, also to discover and try out new things. And we also really focus on storytelling heavily. Storytelling is one of the key parts, and that's a kind of a theme that runs through the whole module. But ultimately, it is about innovation, as the title suggests as well. We very much like to consider new sort of latest sort of cutting edge practices, and how technology can impact film production, and how experimentation and practices research can also have an impact on one's practice. So the module is structured in 3 4-week blocks. The first block is focused on storytelling, where each student develops a story of their own and writes a script for it. Then the second block, 4-week block, is focused on the established practices, where students form small production teams where they execute some of these storytelling projects and make them up to a high production standard. And finally, in a third week block, we focus on innovative practices, where we try to really consider a lot of new things. We do focus on technology, expanded cinema, experimental film, and all sorts of different ways of working, which might also include VR, for example. And what is kind of interesting as well about the module is that the students eventually choose 2 out of the 3 projects that they worked on to submit for their portfolio for one of the assignments. And that sort of gives people a chance to really to work to their strengths, and not necessarily feel to feel limited by everything they do, but instead have that kind of a choice and have the agency to decide which practice represents the best their work on the module.
Fantastic. And I think one of the things that I've observed this trimester is the opportunities for students to work across so many different projects as well at one time. They've been a cohort where they're talk about building a portfolio of work or kind of testing your what you're doing, but they're working across so many different projects at one time that they're able to kind of play and test those different areas of work in.
Yes, no, exactly. There is collaboration is a really important part of the module, and I would say likewise that this is really one of the strengths of an MA, and especially this MA, that we always get a very diverse cohort together of sort of like-minded individuals who all have sort of very interesting educational and professional background, and actually the opportunity for people to collaborate and to share knowledge and share skills with each other. That is often that is always a kind of essential part of the MA experience. And so what I would say is that it's almost students are valuable to each other, almost as much as the kind of the course itself, or rather you cannot separate what the course is and what we provide and ultimately what the students bring. It's always about the interaction of these two elements.
Fab. Thank you, Pavel. And that kind of takes us to trimester 2 with the collaboration and co-creation module, which builds really nicely from trimester 1, which Alex leads.
Yeah, so collaboration and co-creation, I think the way I'd sum it up is that the purpose of this module is to expose students to methods of filmmaking and filmmaking practices that they might not have encountered before. So I guess if trimester 1 is about established practices and then innovation, but innovation may be from the base of your established practice. Trimester 2 is about sort of challenging that at root. It's like saying, well, what happens if we thought about filmmaking in a completely different way? So to give you an example of what that looks like, again, like trimester 1, trimester 2 works in 4-week blocks. So students will spend each block engaging with, practicing, learning about a different approach to filmmaking. That can change year by year, so I don't want to give the impression this is what we do every year. Mm-hmm. But what we'll be doing this year is we'll be doing 4 weeks on devised filmmaking practices. So devising is a method that comes partly from performance, partly from theatre, and is part of my research, along with a few other people, about how we can take those methods and adapt them to film, to a filmmaking practice. And how do you take the craft that people maybe have been trained in film and put that into a devising context as well? So we spend 4 weeks doing that. I think it's great fun, but also a great opportunity to generate different types of films and work in different ways. And I think that what you find with devising and also with all of these methods really is that filmmakers expand their repertoire of methods and their repertoire of processes that they can introduce into their own practices. So if you love devising, you want to go off and make devised films, that's fantastic. Obviously, from my point of view, that's ideal. But even if you don't, by using these new methods, it still absolutely expands your knowledge base in terms of workflow and methodology for your own filmmaking practices, and hopefully you'll take those forward into trimester 3, which Billy will talk about in a moment. So we do devising, and the other two we do a 4-week block on artist film and video, and particularly thinking about artist film and video in gallery spaces, or if not gallery spaces, thinking about space as an element of filmmaking and the space of distribution and exhibition as an element of filmmaking practice. And, what do you do? Questions like, what do you do when an audience isn't captive, when they're walking through a space, or when you've got a bench and they might sit down for 3 minutes of your 15-minute project? How do you design a film and design a space to put that film in that's going to work with that kind of context? And then the last block that we do is on community filmmaking. And so, and each of these blocks is run by sort of different specialists, I should say as well. So, whose research specialism is in the area that they're teaching. And so this final block on community filmmaking is about, how do you work with communities to make films, and not how do you go into a community and make a film, but how do you take the values, the methods, if you like, of that community and adapt those and integrate those into your own filmmaking practice, and be respectful to the values of that community rather than kind of imposing your own values on them. And that's, I think this is going to be a very, very exciting part of the module this year, because we've actually got several community organisations on board that students will be working with. So it isn't just a case of here's how you do communicate community filmmaking. It's, here are some communities groups, go and work with them. And I think that's the case for all three of those blocks, actually. That it's an essential point, of course, that you're doing it. You're not just learning it in theory. I think that goes throughout the whole MA. So devise filmmaking, you're going to devise a film. Community filmmaking, you're going to work with the community. Artist filming video, spatially aware filmmaking, let's call it, you're going to exhibit something in a space somewhere. So that's what Trimester 2 is all about.
Fantastic, thank you. And Billy, do you want to talk to us about how your Trimester 3 kind of builds upon these two modules?
Yeah, so in the third trimester, you do your major project. So the idea is that when you are working on the course, when you're doing trimester 1 with Pavel, trimester 2 with Alex and the different lecturers on these subjects, the idea is you're gradually getting more and more used to this idea of practice research. You kind of, this integration of the two. And then the idea is that hopefully as the course develops, there'll be areas that you become interested in, that you want to research, that you want to build your own project around. So then what happens when it gets to the major project, you have a research question. So you give yourself a research question, and then you create a piece of work that responds to that question, that tries to tackle or in some way answer that question. And so the idea is you could either work completely solo, or ideally you work with other students on the MA course. So you might lead your project, and then you might help someone else out on another person's project. So you sort of like help each other, that kind of thing. And so you have your research question. You create your work. It could be a film, it could be a script, it could be an installation. There's a basically it's very open. That's the whole point of it. But you've done your first 2 trimesters, and then when it gets to the third trimester, you get a chance to do something that's specifically interesting to you, and then you just explore that with your filmmaking, script writing, installation building, whichever it is that you do. And the way you're assessed on it is that you do 2 presentations, which the first one says like what you're going to be exploring, what your research question is, what you're going to be looking at. Then you go away and do the project, you create the work, and then you do another presentation which says like how it went. Did you manage to fully answer the research question, or did more questions come up? Did unexpected things happen? Because the whole point of doing practice research really is that you shouldn't know the answer to your research question before you make the film. So say, for example, you want to explore a specific area, and you've got a research question for it. If you already know the answer, then we don't really think of it as, it's not really thought of as research, because if you already know the answer, then you don't need to make the film, you already know what the answer is. So the idea is you come up with a question, you're not sure what the answer is, and then you create a piece of work, and then that's what helps you get to the answer, kind of thing. So that's the major project, and at the end of it, hopefully you've got a piece of work that's like personal to you, that's tackles your main interest of the time, and then hopefully going forward you can use that as part of your portfolio in future research, or getting work, or exhibiting it, etc.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Well, one thing I just want to kind of clarify, just people are kind of watching or listening to this, you've all kind of touched on about how kind of the things that you make and how you're assessed. And one of the things that I just want to kind of clear up is often when we hear the words kind of practice and research, a question I get asked a lot is kind of, well, do we make things or do I write essays about the research? So I just wondered if anyone wants to talk about kind of the way in which we assess people, And, we talked about presentations and what we make and how we embed a lot of critical reflection in what we do. So just wondered if we could kind of demystify this kind of separation in terms of the what we if we make things, because you were saying the difference about the theory of community filmmaking, for example, but actually we're going to make something. And then what we keep talking about research, and sometimes there becomes a bit of this idea that these are really separate. So
that's a really important question, and just to start, I would like to also just kind of add to what we've already discussed about practice as research, and that kind of fundamental thing, at least for me, that what we mean by practice as research is that the practice is an intrinsic part of the research. You can't separate the two. So the practice itself is an important aspect of what the kind of the new knowledge produced through the research is. So that also is sort of really sort of closely linked with reflection. I think that generally practice as a research allows a filmmaker to be aware of what they do, to reflect on their practice, and to be able to essentially be a thinking filmmaker, somebody who is able to challenge their practice and develop it in a kind of more advanced and innovative way. So I generally think that often when people hear the word research, they might think, oh, this is just some kind of something very kind of non-creative. But the practice research is a really exciting field that really brings practice and research into one thing. So in terms of and I think that it also sort of goes to assessment. I think that definitely for us, and especially on the first trimester module, formative assessment is very important. That kind of assessment where it's not necessarily, what's really important for formative feedback. Yeah, that it's very important that students are able to reflect on their practice in a very kind of relaxed, non-judgmental environment, and be able to improve practice and be able to go back and do things again, which is also, again, for me, another really essential aspect of practice research, that possibility to do something, reflect on it, and then go back and do it again, or do it better, or do it differently. And so that kind of a process of back and forth is very important to practice research, and here reflection is very important.
Some examples from this year from major project to show how the practice and the research link together. So one student was interested in looking at how to show emotion in characters by small movements, small physical movements, what they might do. So that's what they're interested in doing, the research. They want to look at how can you show people's emotions in camera shots, so not relying just on dialogue, and looking at very small moments in a person's actions. That's what they wanted to look at. It was the general idea. So then they went away and in fact looked at different types of lenses that might be good for honing in on small details on a person, or maybe some lenses give some blurring at the edges or something like this to create some interesting effects. And then they went and made a film to see, right, can I, now I've looked at, now what I'll do is I'll take these lenses and I'll make a film, and I'll see does these ideas what I've been looking at, can they work? Will it be effective? So first of all they did a presentation to explain this is what they're going to do. Then they went away and made that film, and at the end they came back, they showed us clips from the movie, and then obviously they're handing the whole film to be assessed, but in the presentation they showed us clips from it and discussed which bits were successful, which bits they could do different next time, that kind of thing. Another student was interested in philosophy, so what we do is they take this philosopher and they say, very interested in this idea this philosopher has, I'd like to explore these kind of ideas in a filmmaking context. So I'll look at this philosophical issue, but I'll place it within a story, and then I'll make a movie about that to see how that comes across to the audience, and also how it comes across in filmmaking. How can I explore this kind of these philosophical issues? And obviously in the presentations they discuss the process.
And I think that kind of leads me to my next kind of thought, or kind of is thinking about but we are unique in that we have these three modules, 60 credit modules, and you've talked about different kind of almost disciplines there, whether it be screenwriting, cinematography, for example, directing. How can a student develop their own pathway through these modules and through the course? We have obviously mentors, don't we, through the course, that are assigned to each and every individual student, where students can meet the mentors and kind of reflect and discuss kind of their aims and ambitions during the modules, and at kind of specific points within each trimester. But I wonder how you kind of feel that the MA, with having these 60 credit modules, supports kind of students to develop a pathway for themselves during the course.
I think this has to do with the kind of student that would want to take this course, right? In that, I think it's fair to say that although, as Pavel said, we do introduce the skills within sort of traditional craft areas around, editing, cinematography, directing, screenwriting, that probably isn't the overall focus of what we would expect a pathway through this course to look like. Like it's the modules, as you've just heard, are more based around the different approaches to filmmaking, with kind of practice as research as this kind of underlying method that we hope will allow students to improve their creative practice. So I think it's important to maybe begin by saying that it's maybe, you're not going to do 24 weeks on improving your ability as a sound mixer or improving your ability as an editor. I think it's about coming in with the craft that you have, either from a filmmaking background or from perhaps another artistic background, and you're very interested in applying that craft that you have to filmmaking, and then learning about different ways that you could use that craft and different ways that you could expand that craft and innovate with that craft, right? So in the first trimester, thinking about how you work with other people, thinking about how storytelling plays into that craft, thinking about how you respond with your craft to challenges that are out there in the world, social challenges, technical challenges. And then in trimester 2, really looking at novel approaches to filmmaking and thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? How does that alter what I want to do? How does that alter my craft and my pathway and how I want to take that forward? So I suppose what we're looking for is students who are coming in with that base level of not knowing who they are as a filmmaker, because that's something that you're developing and that you're always developing during your MA, after your MA, but coming in with an idea of what they can do at the moment as a filmmaker, and with a desire to expand that by looking at the different challenges and the different approaches that other people have taken, and finding their kind of how they can then develop their own approach to filmmaking in response to that. That's what I would say a kind of pathway might look like. And as you said, Beth, kind of supported by mentors, a mentoring system, which so every student is assigned a mentor, which is a member of staff at the university. And of course, we try and pair students up in terms of their interests or their the kind of craft they might be more interested in. We try and support that with a mentor who has the expertise to support that.
We don't really we don't believe that specialism is necessarily something that in that kind of traditional sense has a long-term future in the film industry. And so I think that's precisely what is unique about this MA, is that we don't necessarily offer a specialist pathway. We don't say you will join as a director, you choose your specialism, and then you perfect a specialism. I think it's much more about developing one's own style, one's own approach, and also opening up one's mind. And the reason for it, I think that kind of interesting way to think about it is that distinction between known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And I think that one really useful way, or what would be always an achievement for a student, to turn as many unknown unknowns into known unknowns, and so that they are actually able to know what they don't know, and understand what the possibilities are, and that is actually really a very valid model of the near-term and long-term industry, and that is because because of automation and that kind of elephant in the room, which is AI. And what this world of the future will likely lead to is something we might call sort of just-in-time skills. So that you don't necessarily have to be specialist in everything. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but just knowing what you want, what is the creative mission, what tools you need in order to achieve it, then you can just reach out and very easily adapt your skills with the help of AI and automation, so that ultimately what will be beneficial and what will be the most important, the currency will be creativity and vision. That will still matter, and likewise being versatile and being able to combine things, and then again here practices and research is a really useful way in which to not just to think in a kind of silo of directing and a role and a hierarchy of collaboration, but instead thinking about how can I combine different things into creating something unique. And I think that is the kind of the every student would ultimately define their unique pathway in the process of understanding and learning what is the potential, what is the expanded scope of what they can do and what they can discover.
I'd just say as well, I think like there's different ways how people who approach the course come on it. The whole point of the course is that it's supposed to be quite open to like different working styles. So some students come on the course, like just for argument's sake, they might come on, just purely for argument's sake, they might come on in the background, might be cinematography, say. So what might happen as the course develops, they might, in the first project, they might like be thinking from cinematography point of view, but then they might help another student out who needs someone to record production sound for them, for example. So they might volunteer to do the sound recording there, just for argument's sake. And then on another project, they might collaborate, helping storyboard something, just for argument's sake. And so as the course develops, they might be cinematographer on some projects, but they might gradually be expanding and learning some different skills, this kind of thing. And then when it comes to the major project, they might just think, well, cinematography is my main thing, and that's what they end up still focusing on the major project. But then other people who've come on the course, they've ended up, by the time it gets to the major project, they think they might direct the final film, or they might do a screenplay as the final piece of work. So some students they have a core what they're interested in, like it could just like sound could be the core, and then they sort of help as a assistant director or I don't know, as a costume designer or whatever on different projects, but they've got this core what they follow, but they're trying out these different ideas. And then quite a few other students, they I think that throughout the course they actually do quite a lot of different roles. So they might sort of like how Pavel's saying there, is like how they end up sort of becoming a bit more of a complete filmmaker in a way, where they might have one area they consider like the strongest, or two areas they consider the strongest, but they pick up a lot of skills in other areas too. So they become a little bit more independent, a little bit more knowledgeable about the overall process of the filmmaking. So those are like some different paths that students take. There's not like one prescribed way that everyone has to do the course a certain way. It can appeal to different people, I think, depending, like on your personality and how you like to work with others and this kind of thing.
So my last kind of question to you all, we often talk about that this isn't just a fourth year of a film production course. It's something different to that. So if you had done a film course before, maybe you haven't, and that's the other thing I did want to flag. You don't have to have done a film production course before doing this. I hope we kind of made that clear here. You can come from different backgrounds, and we really welcome people from kind of diverse backgrounds in terms of their experiences. Why would maybe you, or why would you suggest to somebody to do this MA? What they're going to get out of this year of spending the 12 months focusing their thinking around filmmaking in this very particular way?
I mean, I would do it, or I think I would do it if I was a filmmaker who wanted to open my mind to new possibilities, open my mind and open my practice to new possibilities. If I wanted to learn in detail, how to work in a particular department, this isn't in a way that's been established for 50 years. This probably isn't the MA for you. I think this is the MA for okay, I know something about filmmaking, or not necessarily about filmmaking, about my own creative practice. But now I want that to explode that. I want to work with lecturers and with other students who have different approaches and different backgrounds. I want to understand what's going on in the world and how I respond to that. I want to understand how the histories of different creative practices can be brought into a film production context and find my own path through that. That's if you're that kind of person, then I think that this is the kind of MA that's for you.
Fabulous, thank you.
Yeah, I'd say that some things that you can get out of this if you come on the course is, for one, you'll get to try out a lot of different roles. So, or at least the opportunity is there for you if you want to take that approach. So you may have a specialism, but like Alex is saying there, you can open up your practice and you can try different things, and that's encouraged. So by the end of the course, there might be other areas that you feel quite confident in that maybe you didn't know so well before. So that's one thing. I also think that at the end of the course, you'll end up with several pieces of finished work that are of different styles, of different methods, and that's good because it gives you a portfolio going forward that you might want to use to either display the work or to take your work forward. So there's that. You're going to make contacts with different people because you're going to be working with different people day in, day out on the course, and that's going to help you moving forward. I also think because of the practice research element, this can help you a lot, because some people might do this course and it would be very useful for them. Then if anyone wanted to move into a practice research PhD, this would be a really good starting point for them, because it's giving you a lot of skills in practice research ready for if you wanted to take the study further. So it's preparing you for that. Sometimes when you do an MA, if it's purely a bit more of a traditional one, if you then went straight to do a PhD, it would be a very big difference. It might be quite a jump. Whereas if you do this one, it's a nice way of bridging that gap from doing a traditional course. You do this, it gives you a lot of skills that can prepare you for the idea of what practice research is and how to use it in a productive way. So I think those are some of some good ways how the course can help you and what you can get from it. Yeah,
that's really interesting. As Billy kind of pointed out that MA can be or is the kind of the route potentially towards a PhD, but also it's kind of interesting to think about what it really means that having BA on one side and PhD on the other side, and kind of MA sits somewhere in the middle. And so whilst on an undergraduate course, you generally you receive knowledge and you learn things that are out there in the world, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the PhD, you actually create knowledge. The point of research on a PhD level is to create new knowledge, and I would say that MA is a kind of transition from this one world to this other, where you become sort of, when you take a kind of knowledge or ability and skill to a certain level, and then you start innovating and start questioning and start working independently on the pathway towards actually being the sole creator of something entirely new. And then of course, what you do with that if you don't want to do a PhD, which is absolutely fine. And then I would say that what you can do with it is that you will first of all have the confidence to be somebody who can actually create new, conceptualize things in a new way, and sort of create ideas, and that would really equip you towards being a kind of creative leader and creative innovator. And I believe that this is a very important thing. That's possibly way more important than actually having knowledge and skill, is to understand the kind of the bigger picture, the bigger context of how things fit together, and ultimately being able to play around with concepts and ideas and skills in a creative way. And so there is a important connection between creativity and independence. I don't think you can really be a creative person if you're not also an independent thinker. And so I think that we very much believe in independent thinking and critical thinking, and that can ultimately support and inspire creativity and innovation. And that again, in a nutshell, is what Practice as a Research is about.
I think it sounds like a great place to kind of end, but before I end, I just want to talk about very, very briefly about if someone's watched this and does want to apply. All that we ask for in terms of an application is to obviously go through the University of Salford's website, and through that we will ask for a covering letter and a portfolio of your work. If you don't come from a filmmaking background, but you have other experiences, then we want to see those. And then following that, we have an interview process. And that interview process includes obviously meeting us and talking to us about your work and what you're looking to get from the MA. But also we do ask in that for a proposal for a potential project that you would make on the MA. I've really enjoyed listening to you all, and it's got me very energised and excited about the MA. I think, the thing that I take from it when you talk about it is this opportunity for thinking about your work and your practice and the context of that work within the wider world, which is an exciting place to be. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for watching.